Hello, how are you doing? I'm so glad you are able to stop by and get a word for your life. I hope this word that you're about to receive is going to bless you as much as it has blessed me. The only thing I love more than teaching and preaching God's word is hearing people be blessed by it. So I'm so excited to deliver this word for you. Stay tuned. God has a message just for you. Exodus chapter 3. Verse 19 and 20. We've been in this series for several weeks now entitled Defeating the Spirit of Pharaoh. Last week, we started on the plagues. We're going to continue that on today. Verse 19 reads like this: However, I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless compelled by a mighty hand. So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all the wonders that I will do in it. After that, he will let you go. Verse 20 says, God says, I will strike Egypt with all the wonders, and after that, he will let you go. I'm going to continue talking about attacking Pharaoh. Attacking Pharaoh. A very cowardly and common response, a cowardly yet common response to dealing with the pharaohs that bind us is to beat the system. Now, wait a minute, Pastor. Didn't you just tell us last week that we ought to aim to beat the systems and defeat the systems? And meanwhile, to succeed, the basic meaning of beat the system in the slang term, if you will, it means to succeed by avoiding or breaking the rules. Beating the system. It means to go around the system. It means to find loopholes in the system. It means to go around the system, find a way to break rules so that one might succeed without following the rules. A story is told of this young boy, little boy, who was stuck between a rock and a hard place. His mom said, son, do not bring your tablet in the kitchen. And she told him also, do not take your food in the living room. So, because these kids are a lot smarter these days, young boy decided to lay on the floor where the kitchen and the living room connect. He places his tablet on the floor in the living room and his food and drink on the floor in the kitchen, while he can operate in two different rooms without breaking the rules. Mama comes in, gets frustrated, and she couldn't say anything because he technically hadn't broke the rules. He just found a way to beat the system. Still got the whooping just because he didn't get the whooping for being smart, but he got the whooping for being smart. And while my illustration is comical, it's just the way many of us operate with God. We find ways to go around the rules and go around the system. And I want you to understand God's 10 commandments are still the 10 commandments. And we oftentimes make the tragic mistake of trying to go around the rules. We try to beat the system. We try to beat the system. Too many of us would rather beat the system than simply just face Pharaoh. For example, if our Pharaoh is financial, the system of welfare is set up to give you a hand up, not a hand out. But our way of beating the system is living off of government assistance permanently when it's supposed to be a temporary solution. Meanwhile, everybody else is paying for it, but you, instead of facing your financial problems and doing better with your money, you've decided to beat the system. Even in our legal system, we'll find ways to circumvent and get around the rules. Even in our education system, we find ways to break the rules and go around the rules. We'll cheat our way into a degree. We will talk our way out of some stuff. Why? But we will break the rules and beat the system, but we'll do so in a way that costs us our integrity. God is not pleased with us when we find the ways and we think that we're being clever, when the truth of the matter is we're contaminated, and the truth of the matter is we are terrified, because instead of facing our Pharaoh, we decide to go around Pharaoh and go around the system. We have the audacity to even call it faith when we beat the system. But faith is not doing things your way at his expense, but faith is doing things God's way at our expense. I'm going to say that one more time. Faith is not doing things your way at God's expense. It is doing things God's way at your expense. And which leads me to ask, what has your faith costed you? We'd rather win by doing wrong out of fear of losing for doing right. We'd rather win by doing wrong out of fear of losing if you do it right. We would rather live on top of the bottom than face the pharaohs that keep us on the bottom. Jesus came that you may have life, and that more abundantly. You do not have to live off of a lie. You do not have to live off of beating the system. You do not have to live off of going around the rules. But if you just simply decided to take your Pharaoh and face him head on, you can live victoriously and still live honestly. But too many of us want to live as winners but still being losers in our morals. We have financial victories but moral failures. We are a public success but a private failure. We have victories with no morals. Victories with no morals. And what I found the most amazing about God in these plagues that he sends to Egypt is that he didn't beat the system by going around it. He defeats the system by going through it. Each plague challenges the systems of Pharaoh. Notice, we are already 3 plagues in, and God has not harmed one little hair on Pharaoh's head. He has not cut him. He has not injured him. He has only attacked the systems that Pharaoh depends on. We are 3 plagues in. God has been angry. He's done a lot of things to the systems of Pharaoh, but he hasn't touched Pharaoh. Can I suggest to you in that revelation is that a lot of times you don't have to do nothing to your Pharaoh. You just have to attack the systems that Pharaoh uses to oppress you. If you don't understand that, go get last week's message. And watch this now. The funny thing is these plagues, if we're not careful, we will read these plagues and think that they happen over a matter of weeks. But that's not true. These plagues went on over several months. They were disasters used to convince Pharaoh. They were used to give Pharaoh a chance, and they were used to defeat the gods of Pharaoh. These disasters were designed to do 3 things. They were designed to convince Pharaoh to let them go. They were designed to give Pharaoh a chance. And they were designed to defeat the gods of Egypt, the little gods, the idol gods of Egypt. And last week, we talked about the first 3 plagues. The first plague was the blood. Enough said. I got to move on from there, because if I stick around through there, I might lose my mind. But the blood, he turned the Nile River into the blood. And then he sent the frogs. Frogs were everywhere. Here a frog, there a frog, everywhere a frog. Frogs in the house, frogs in the bed, frogs in the kitchen, frogs everywhere. And then, if that wasn't enough, Pharaoh still ain't got the message, so he sent the gnats. And I ain't got time to go through there, but he sent the gnats, and every dust particle in Egypt turned into a flying, aggravating, irritating gnat insect. God has a way of irritating Pharaoh to where he say, man, let them folk go. And then I want you to notice this pattern of the plagues that happen, the pattern of the plagues. In each one of these plagues, this happens. The Lord informs Moses, and then Moses warns Pharaoh. And then Pharaoh's plague occurs. Then Pharaoh asks for relief. And then the plague is removed. And then Pharaoh's heart is hardened. This is the exact same pattern in every plague. God tells Moses what to tell him. Moses warns Pharaoh. The plague occurs. Pharaoh says, man, what you got to do to get this plague off of me? Then God removes the plague, and then Pharaoh's heart is hardened. This happens in every single plague that God sends to Egypt. Today we're going to be discussing the plagues 4 through 6. But I want you to notice the set of plagues that we discussed today are more severe than the plagues that we discussed last week. The plagues get more and more severe as we get closer. It gets more and more severe as we get closer. Let's look at plague number 4, and you'll find it in verse 8 and 24. Chapter 8, verse 24. Let's look at plague number. This is the plague of the flies. Y'all ever been at outside picnic, barbecue, and seem like flies is everywhere? They get on your nerves, don't they? You can't even eat your food. You're swatting flies. Can't even enjoy your drink because you're swatting flies. And then if that ain't bad enough, if they get on your plate, then they get on you. Look at chapter 8, verse 24. I want you to see something. And the text says this, and the Lord did so. There came great swarms of flies into the house of Pharaoh and into his servants' houses throughout all the land of Egypt. The land was ruined by the swarms of flies. So we ain't talking about a few flies. we ain't talking about a few flies like at the picnic. We talking about swarms. We ain't talking about one swarm of flies. We talking about enough flies to cover the entire land of Egypt. You couldn't even see your hand in front of your face. It was that many flies. Now, if you've been at a picnic and it was flies everywhere, that's one thing, because it ain't too bad because you'll stick around at the picnic. But these ain't the type of flies we dealing with. We dealing with several swarms of flies, so much that they didn't just fly around, but they rested everywhere. In the bed, in the clothes, in the food, in the pantry, in the kitchen, in the restrooms, in the bathtubs, in the sinks, in the cribs where the babies sleep. Everywhere there were swarms of flies. You couldn't open nothing. You couldn't do nothing. You couldn't even see. And watch this. These flies were all over the place. They were everywhere, on everybody. The text says, but if you look at verse 24, the text says, and the Lord did so. Ooh, I think I need to pull over right there and remind somebody that whatever you're dealing with, when when the plague comes, don't you think for 1 minute that it's you that's doing the work, because the text says the Lord did so. God has a way of shaking up your Pharaoh and shaking up the county he lives in. And the Lord did so. Well, somebody wondering, how did you make it through? I'll tell them how. The Lord did so. How did you make it out of that situation? I'll tell you how. The Lord did so. How did you pay all your bills with the money that you make? The Lord did so. How did you finish school the way you finished school? I'll tell you, the Lord did so. Who did it? The Lord did it. How you get through it? The Lord did it. How you make it out? The Lord brought me. How did you get your hair cut? The Lord did it. How did you get your nails done? The Lord did it. How did you keep your job? The Lord did it. How did you keep your joy? The Lord did it. When you ask yourself, who did it? Stop taking credit for what the Lord has done. You ain't that anointed on your best day of the week. Because at the end of the day, the Lord did it. I remember one time I preached a revival out of town. And this preacher came up to me. He said, man, I ain't never heard preaching like that. And unless I be exalted above measure. I said, I sure hate to tell you, but I can't take no credit for what the Lord has done. Because the Lord did it. I'm just the vessel. What he did through me, he could have done through anybody because the Lord did it. When you think about how you going to make it out of what you're going through right now, let me tell you how. The same way you got out the last mess you was in, the Lord did it. Says the Lord did so. And there came great swarms of flies. Swarms of flies. We ain't talking about one swarm or two swarms. We're talking about swarms of flies. They came to the house of Pharaoh. So notice the order of the verse. When it says the Lord did it and came the flies, notice the first place they go. They go to the house of Pharaoh. How do flies know where to go first? Jesus, I wish I had somebody to help me talk back to me. God has a way of keeping us. He keeps us in such a way that he can send our flies on assignments. He can take the very things that irritate us and turn them toward our enemy to make them. He told the flies where to go because God became their GPS. He said, go to Pharaoh's house first. He sent them to Pharaoh, and then when they filled up Pharaoh's house, they didn't leave, but more swarms went to the servant's house. These are the people that serve Pharaoh. These are the people that tend to Pharaoh. These are the people that do everything Pharaoh say. These are the yes men of Pharaoh. The punks, the cowards, the ones that do whatever Pharaoh say. He said, God says, I'm not just going to affect Pharaoh's house, but everybody in Pharaoh's camp, everybody that's on Pharaoh's side, I'm going to their house too. He says the Pharaoh's house and the servant's house. And then they go in Pharaoh's house, set up camp. More flies come to the servant's house, set up camp. And then, check this out. Then they go throughout the whole land of Egypt. The whole land. The text says the land was ruined. Look at the last thing the verse 24 says. The land was ruined by the swarms. The land was ruined. He destroyed the land. It was ruined by the swarms. When God sent this plague, this was not just about sending some flies to upset Pharaoh. Remember, God is not just attacking Pharaoh with plagues, but he's also attacking the gods. Every plague we see has a god, an Egyptian god, attached to it. And in this situation, he attacks the god Wadjet, which is the fly goddess. See, she is the goddess of insect life. You have to understand, the reason why Pharaoh said in the very beginning, who is the Lord? Because they don't worship the same Lord that Israel worshiped. They have their own gods. So they don't have one God. They've got many Greek gods. He's strategically attacking their gods. In every plague, he's attacking their gods. The Wadjet is a fly goddess. She is a goddess of the insect life. Now, watch this now. What this teaches me is that God was attacking their money. How do you know that, Pastor? Wait a minute. What? You just lost me. What that got to do with money? him attacking, what the flies got to do with the money? I'm so glad that you asked. The flies, they pollinate the papyrus tree. They turn the papyrus tree into paper and official scrolls out of it. What am I trying to teach you? Is that God is going to hit Pharaoh in the pocketbook. Ooh, I wish I had somebody help me preach this today. He hit Pharaoh where it hurts him the worst. When you can attack Pharaoh's money, you can get Pharaoh's attention. Oh my God, I wish somebody would get excited about the fact that he's attacking the money of Pharaoh, and all the land was ruined. But look in verse 22. I want you to go look at verse 22. I want to show you something. Now, I just got done telling you that he attacked Pharaoh with, he sent the flies on an assignment. Let me tell you how I know God is driving them. Verse 22 says, but on that day, I will give special treatment to the land of Goshen, where my people are living. No flies will be there. This way you will know that I, the Lord, am in the land. Woo! Oh, I wish I had somebody help me preach this word up in here on today. I want you to understand, when God sent these flies on their assignment, he sent them, he knew where to send them, but he also told them where not to go. Oh, I want you to understand, God is moving you to a season where your enemy will fall apart, but your house going to still be standing. God is moving you to a season where everybody that can't stand you, their stuff is falling apart, but your house is still standing. Your mortgage is still paid. Your car is still in the driveway. Everybody else got corona, but your house is still standing. I'll never forget when we were hosting citywide youth revival, Thomas Earl. And God did something that blew my mind. We were hosting citywide youth revival, and I had all these kids from all over the city in here. All these folk from all over the place in here. And a tornado took out down Lee Street. Whew. And the sirens went off. And I put everybody in one place and said, I need everybody to stop what you're doing, get there quickly. Because there's a tornado marching down Lee Street. And before I knew it, and when everything had cleared, I know there was damage before us. And then there was damage after us. Oh, I wish I had somebody help me up in here. Why? Because God said you can go down Lee Street, but you're going to have to skip over the bread house. I don't know why he did it. All I know is that God sends nature with an assignment, and you ought to thank God that your house is still standing when everybody else's is falling. That's how he kept you. Told the flies where they couldn't go. Don't go over there, because that's where my people at. And I'm just crazy enough to believe that if one fly had disobeyed his order, that fly would have died. I don't know, and maybe if the fly would have disobeyed his order, that fly would have got saved. I don't know what happened, but I do know the flies didn't go to Goshen. What we must understand in this plague is that Pharaoh does not take you seriously until you affect his land and his hand. Listen, I think it's a beautiful thing in social justice when people that are not people of color march with those of color. I think it's a beautiful thing when we're fighting for black lives and white people show up. I think it's a great thing. But it's one thing for you to march with me, but it's another thing for you to struggle with me. There's a big difference. Here's what I mean, is that until Pharaoh's land and his hand is affected, then marching is just your way of doing community service, charitable work. But it is not until you are affected by what affects Pharaoh that you can really, see, anybody can march with you, but when your white privilege has to take a back seat to my black rights, I'm going to get in trouble for saying that one. I'm going to get in trouble for saying that, but I'll say it again. Don't erase it off the tape. I meant what I said. I will not take it back. It will not be fair until your white privilege takes a back seat to my black rights. And I don't mind you marching with me. I think it's a beautiful thing. I think it's a great thing. But at some point, you've got to suffer the way I've suffered in order to understand what I'm dealing with. Preach, Pastor Jay. I'm trying as hard as I can. Watch this. In verse 28 allows us, but look at what happens in verse 28. Y'all, this is going to trip you out. In verse 28, Pharaoh does not, he allows them this counterfeit freedom. This is a very common thing with Pharaoh. When you're trying to get free from Pharaoh and you've bugged the daylights out of him all this time, this is what he'll do. Pharaoh responded, I will let you go and sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness, but stop right there. See, Pharaoh gonna always have a condition to your exit. You can go, but some of y'all have heard that from. Have you heard that from Pharaoh before? They gonna give you they gonna redefine the conditions that God gave you. Listen, do not bargain with Pharaoh. If the Lord said do this, then that's what you do. But look at what he says. He says, but don't go very far. Pharaoh don't mind you leaving. He just got a problem with you staying gone. He does not mind you going away. He just don't want you to go too far. He wants you far enough away from him so he can sleep at night, but not too far away where he can still keep using you the way he's been using you. Ooh, who am I preaching to up in here today? He's giving you conditions for your freedom. That's what I call counterfeit freedom. And some people have settled for this counterfeit, this fake freedom, this fake version of freedom. But if that ain't enough to move you, look at what he says in the last part. Pray for me. Oh man, are y'all reading this the way I'm reading it? He says, pray for me. Wait a minute. Do not miss these last few words, because this is a huge turning point in the freedom process. When Pharaoh asks you to pray to your God that he don't believe in on his behalf. Oh my God. You have ministered to, watch this. Your plagues have now ministered to Pharaoh. I ain't saying Pharaoh got saved, but I am saying that he finally started to see something in your God that he didn't see before. I want you to understand God will blow your enemy's mind. He will cause them, because no wonder the Bible says every knee shall bow. That means Pharaoh too. And every tongue shall confess. So don't be too mad at Pharaoh. Watch this, because there will come a time where he'll ask you, when it gets so bad, when he gets so tired of God kicking his tail, he will say, please, whoever you pray to is working for you. I'm begging you, pray for me. Lean in real close when I tell you this. Pray for Pharaoh. Ooh, that's a hard pill to swallow there, Pastor, because Pharaoh done killed my family. Pharaoh has destroyed my life. He has made me their slave. He won't let me do anything. And you know what he's doing to me. And you got the audacity, the humiliated gall to ask me to pray for my Pharaoh. What do you mean? And when I do pray, what I'm supposed to pray for? You want me to pray God bless them the way he blessed me? You want me to pray that God do for them what he did for me? They don't deserve what I got. Some of us are so terrified to pray for our Pharaoh because we scared God just might do what we prayed for. We want revenge. But God said pray for him. And we ain't going, no, Lord, and you're going too far because you asking me to pray for Pharaoh. God, wasn't you there for what he did? And what am I supposed to pray for? I don't know. The text don't say. Remember, Pharaoh asked for prayer. We do not know what he asked for prayer for. Maybe he was asking for prayer to stop these plagues because they're getting on his nerves and they're costing him money. I don't know. What I do know is that we have a responsibility to pray for Pharaoh. What do I pray, Pastor? I don't know. I will tell you one thing you should pray is deliverance. You need to pray that Pharaoh gets delivered. Now, Pastor, oh, wait a minute. You mad now? But hold on. Because just like you have a Pharaoh, you've also been Pharaoh. Okay. See, some of us have Pharaohs, but some of us also got Pharaoh tendencies. And the same deliverance you had to get from God is the same deliverance you're going to need God to get for them. Because watch this, the Bible does not say y'all have sinned. He said all have sinned. He said don't go too far. He says go just a bit ways out and then you can go worship your God. This was a setup. I did not realize this until I read further in my studies. But this was a setup. Because what he was telling them to do was just go instead of a 3-day journey, which gets you out of the land of Egypt and out of the country. Because watch this, when you change lands, you should change laws. So he said, don't go too far, meaning long as you stay in Egypt, you can do what you want to do. But Pharaoh, this is a setup. Because if they had actually done this, then they would be guilty of worshiping another god on Egyptian territory, which could cause them to suffer vital consequences. This was a setup. He told them, don't go far, because watch this. What would happen is it was illegal in the Egyptian land to worship any other god other than Egyptian gods, which is why they asked, let us leave to go worship, because they're not trying to go around the system. He said, I got to leave to go worship. He said, no, y'all just go right out there and worship him, knowing that if they were caught worshiping anything other than the Egyptian god, they were going to have hell to pay. No deal. Let me tell you something. Stop making deals with Pharaoh. Stop making deals with Pharaoh. The second plague, this one won't take as long. The second plague is the plague 5 of the livestock in 9 verse 6. Look at 9 verse 6. And the next day, there it is, the Lord did this. All the livestock of all the Egyptians died, but not one of the livestock of the people of Israel died. Now look at verse 5. I want you to back up at verse 5. Look at verse 5. Verse 5 says, and the Lord set a time. He set a time for this plague, saying, tomorrow the Lord will do this thing in the land. Tomorrow. He tells them not only what he gonna do, but when he gonna do it. Now go back to verse 6. All the livestock of the Egyptians died. All the livestock of the Egyptians died. This was an attack on the god and goddess of cattle, which is named Hathor and Apis. This explains why God got disgusted and very angry when they made a golden calf image. Because God says, remember they made the golden calf. This is well after they had been delivered from Egypt. And when Moses and Aaron went up on the mountain, Moses was writing the 10 Commandments. Moses is up there hearing from God. And then when he comes back, they down there dancing naked around a golden calf. And they took the golden calf, they turned their goods into a god. They took the earrings and the jewelry from the people and made a golden calf out of it. God got very offended because God said, look, I brought you out of Egypt away from this mess, yet now you making gods, so you're trying to be a mockery of me. Now, it is disrespectful when God bring you out and you keep going back into the foolishness he bring you out of. God says, stop wasting my deliverance. It was disrespectful because now you're erecting a god. You've taken my deliverance. You've taken my miracle, but you're going to still do what Egyptians do. God is angry when he brought you out of the world, but you keep looking like the world. You keep acting like the world. The same place he delivered you from, you still got to keep checking up on. You still doing. That's why. Why is that important? Why? Because God can get you out of Egypt, but it's going to be a whole lot of long years before he get Egypt out of you. Preach, Pastor Jay. I'm trying as hard as I can. This livestock affected their source of labor and food. Livestock was designed to give food, and it was a source of labor. God is destroying, if you haven't noticed, God is destroying the economy of Pharaoh while protecting the economy of Israel. Look at verse 7. I want to show you something in verse 7. Look at verse 7. I want to show you something. Pharaoh know what he dealing with. But he don't know. He said, this got to be going on everywhere. So Pharaoh sent messengers who saw that not a single one of the livestock in Israel was dead. Pharaoh said, this can't just be going on in my house. Let me see if this is happening in Israel. Can I tell you something? Your enemy, let me say this to you. Lean in when I tell you this. Pharaoh gonna always send people to check in on you. Ooh, who I'm helping today. I don't know who I'm helping today. But listen, Pharaoh always got somebody spying on you. How well they doing, how they acting, who they with, where they been, where they going. Pharaoh always got somebody checking for you. And listen, baby, you better tell Pharaoh, don't watch me, watch TV. Because you're gonna fool around and get your feelings hurt. I'm in the text because the text says when he found out that when he went out there, he found out Israel was doing just fine. You wouldn't even get your feelings hurt like that had you not been checking for me. Well, they done moved on and everything. They got somebody else. But no, you did that to yourself. Baby, not that ain't nobody care. You shouldn't have sent your little spies to go check on them. Ooh, am I helping anybody in the building? Last plague is this. Look at the boils. look at chapter 9, verse 10. Look at verse 10 and 11. Look at verse 10 and 11. I'm done, for real. Verse 10 and 11. So they took soot from the kiln and stood before Pharaoh. And Moses threw it in the air, and it became boils, breaking out in sores on man and beast. And the magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils, for the boils came upon the magicians and upon all the Egyptians. The text says they took soot from the kennel. Soot is ashes. He took the soot, standing right in front of Pharaoh, and Moses threw it up in the air. And when it went in the air as soot, but it came down as boils. I want you to understand something. He sent it up in the air. Now, I told you, every time God tells them to use an object, he says, send it up to me. Because if he'd just threw it at them, it'd just been soot on them. But if he threw it up in the air, the soot has now been empowered with an assignment. So he throw it up in the air. It came down as boils. Here's what you need to understand. Let's ride, Blue. Here's what you need to understand. When it comes down as boils, God is not just the God of healing, but he's also the God of sickness. He teaches them, he said when it came down as boils breaking out in sores on man and beast. Watch this. This wasn't just a human disease. The animals got boils and sores. The humans, everybody got boils. And so you ever had a boil? It hurts. But watch this. They didn't just have a couple of them. They had them everywhere. It's a trip what a little soot can do. He threw it up in the air. A handful of it. Threw it up in the air. And by the time it came down, everything in Egypt broke out in boils. All over the place. He attacks the gods of health and disease, which is Sekhmet and Sunu and Isis. These are the Greek gods of health and disease. Sekhmet, Sunu, and Isis. Everybody had boils on them. Funny thing is, they rich and sick. Because some things money can't buy. They rich and sick. Got mansions and sick. Got gold and sick. God does not need to kill Pharaoh to attack Pharaoh. But I want you to look at something. Look at what happens with the advisors, the magicians. Look, verse 11 says, and the magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils. For the boils came upon the magicians too, and all of Egypt. The magicians, you've been reading about, hearing about these magicians all the time. I'm going to show you a couple things about them. The magicians were Pharaoh's advisors. They needed to know, they were the ones that told Pharaoh whether what the plague that was happening, was it just some weather accident? And when the magicians could do what God was doing, he didn't take God seriously. And so the magicians were Pharaoh's advisors. But look at verse 12. I'm going to get to that in a second. The text says the magicians couldn't handle it. They could not stand before Moses. They couldn't handle it. They got sick. This is the last time you're going to read in the history, in these pharaohs, the last time you're going to see the magicians. I've already looked ahead. You will not see them anymore. Pastor, where's the revelation in their absence? I'll tell you. Everybody that's advising Pharaoh on how to deal with you, everybody that's telling Pharaoh how to handle you. God ain't, notice, he ain't got rid of Pharaoh yet, but he gonna get rid of Pharaoh's advisory council. Everybody Pharaoh looks to try to figure out, is this real or not? God says, I'm gonna deal with them too. And not only he gonna get rid of them, but he made them sick. And I'm gonna tell you what I believe. Now I don't know if this is true or not, but this is what I believe. Pharaoh did not get rid of the magicians. I believe the magicians couldn't stand it because the text says they can't stand in front of Pharaoh now. The magicians are like, now wait a minute. It's one thing when you get sick, but it's a whole other thing when my house gets sick. And the magician said, no, now you done went too far. I got balls all over me. My kids got balls. My wife got balls. I'm just supposed to be your magician and your advisor. I ain't got time to be dealing with this. Well, what I do know, we never heard about him again. God is stripping Pharaoh of his systems. Woo! I wish I had some help over here. People that advise him, he's going to take them out. Everything he depend on, he's taking them out. All his money, he's taking them out. And after a while, Pharaoh ain't going to have nothing left but Pharaoh. Hard to be a ruler. Hard to be a leader when you ain't got nobody. A leader with no followers is just somebody taking a walk. In verse 12, the text says, now all this time, remember I told you that the text just said Pharaoh's heart was hardened. But I want you to notice something in here, in this verse. And I'm done. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. The Lord did it this time. What does that mean, to harden his heart? It made him more rebellious. He intentionally made him more angry, intentionally made him more disruptive and disobedient. Now, Lord, why would you turn my enemy more against me? God says, because what I'm about to do next, he gonna need to be more mad at you. Because the madder he gets at you, the more angry he is at you, the sweeter your revenge gonna taste. It's one thing when you make Pharaoh mad. It's another thing when you run him hot. Because now when he real mad and you get free, you can look at him and say, oh, you mad now? Oh, you mad now? You big mad or you little mad? Huh? He wanted him to be mad. Because that's going to make revenge that much sweeter. God never told us we can't get revenge. He said it belongs to him. Why? I'm done. I'll tell you why. Because he does revenge so much better than you. Wow, I hope you enjoyed that message. I hope it was a blessing to your life. Listen, now it's time for you to put into action what you just heard. Everything that God gives us, he intends for us to use in our daily life. What's the point of hearing a great word if you're not going to use the great word? So listen, it's time for you to, if you haven't accepted Christ, do so. Accept him as your Lord and Savior. Also, join a Bible-based church. We welcome you right here at the Bread House to come as you are and stay as you grow. Do you want to hear more great messages from right here at our church? Simply go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. Search Bread House Fed and then click the subscribe button. And there's also a little gray bell. If you click that bell, it will give you notifications every time we add new content. I'm so glad you stopped by. God bless you. God loves you, and so do I.